Greetings, Dental XP viewers. It's my honor and privilege to be here, and I'd like to thank Dental XP and Dr. Mari Salama and Eddie for having given me an opportunity to speak to you all out here. My name is TV Narayan. I practice in Bangalore in India, and I'm going to be speaking to you about some of the challenges that I have faced in the past in aesthetic zone implant placement and restoration, and some of the solutions that I've used to overcome these problems that I've encountered. This is one of my favorite sayings and quotes from Franz Kafka, and that is that there's only one cardinal sin, and that is impatience. And because of impatience, we were driven out of paradise, and because of impatience, we can't return, which is very true for a lot of things that we do in implant dentistry. You need to give things time to heal, and if you're trying to be in a hurry, you're not going to be getting the outcomes that you want. When you take a look at a picture like this, it seems like a fairly pleasing enough smile on the outside. Now, when you open her mouth, you lift her lips up, you can see that it is aesthetically not an acceptable treatment. She's got an implant bridge resting on two implants on the central incisors. However, her lip helps mask most of those issues, and as far as she is concerned, she's happy. But that is not the aim of what we do in our practices, and we're trying to get the best possible outcomes with every case. A few other situations like this girl has had some socket grafting done at a practice that she used to go to, and you can see out here that she's already opening up on her papillae between the central incisors and between the central and the lateral. She's wearing a provisional bridge right now. When I lift her lip, you can, with a retracted view, you can see that there is a lot of loss of tissue, and this is not going to be something that is easy to restore so after having spoken to her about all the options that she had in terms of horizontal and vertical augmentation, she chose to take the simple route, and we ended up giving her a porcelain fused to zirconia bridge with some gingival porcelain. This is not an ideal outcome, but this is the outcome that she chose, and she's good with this. But it's not very often that you can get a decent enough match with this pink porcelain, and to get something to look aesthetically acceptable when you're dealing with pink porcelain is tough. Another view, a lateral view of the same. And just to illustrate my point of how pink porcelain doesn't always work out well, you can take a look at this case where the left lateral incisor and canine are resting on implants, and there was a vertical deficiency in gingiva, and therefore we needed to add some pink porcelain, and there is absolutely no match here. Although over a period of time it integrates better, this is over a year later, and you can see that there has been some soft tissue growth, and there is a bit of a blend, but even then it is very, very discernible. Again, poor crown and bridge on an implant, and you can see that poor crown on an implant, you can see the loss of soft tissue there, you can see the amount of show of the implant through the buccal plate. This is a patient with a bridge, and when you take a look at her, you can see that her smile is absolutely unacceptable. When you take a look at her from an incisal view, you can see the amount of horizontal loss that she's had of soft tissues, which is the primary reason why her bridge looks as bad as it does. She has eventually gone ahead and got this replaced after having had soft tissue augmentation, and she's in a much better place now. But the point I'm trying to make is restorations in the anterior zone are difficult if all the determinants that are required to ensure a decent restoration are not in place. So what are the determinants to success in this anterior aesthetic zone? Obviously, one of the first things that you need to have to do implant therapy in the anterior zone is adequate bone volume and a good interdental height of bone. Along with this, you need to have adequate soft tissue volume. One would assume that if you had good bone, you would also have good soft tissue. But what we need to understand is that just having enough soft tissue is not adequate if the type of soft tissue is not right. So you want to have a thick gingival biotype. The lip line is a key determinant of aesthetic outcomes in these situations, as you saw with the first case that I showed you. Then comes things that are in your control as the practitioner, and that is the precision with which you three-dimensionally locate your implant in bone, and then going ahead and restoring it with sound prosthetic principles and laboratory support. So let's take a look at a few situations where there was a little manipulation required, starting from a very simple situation where just a modified palatal roll was adequate to take care of the deficiencies that we were looking at, to more complex situations where a number of other procedures needed to be done. This is a patient with a fractured left lateral incisor, that is tooth number 22 in the FDI system. Now this was beyond salvage, and you can see the fracture running horizontally at the neck. You can also see that if any restorative procedure had to be carried out on this existing, it had a fractured post inside, it would mean doing a surgical crown lengthening before anything else could be done. So there was absolutely no ferrule, and we decided on going ahead and doing implant replacement for this tooth. Upon extraction, and if you'll go back to the radiograph, you'll see that this tooth has a really long root. The root length was over 13 millimeters. The root length was over 13 millimeters, and that meant that immediate implant placement in a situation like this, I'm a little conservative about it, because I would not like to put in a long 16 millimeter long implant into a site like this. You lose a lot of control over your drilling to implant positioning. So I decided to do an immediate delayed, an early delayed placement, and the extraction was performed with periotomes, an atraumatic extraction, if you will have, if there is anything as such. But you can see that at the end of the procedure, the violence shows with the amount of blood vessels that have been severed and the bleeding and so on. You can also see in this photograph that the patient has a reasonably thick gingival type. We allowed the site to heal for a period of 6 weeks, and we had good soft tissue cover. Went back in with a flap, but I would also like you to look at this right now, and you can see that there is a bit of a soft tissue defect that is perceptible on the incisal view. This is a CBCT at 6 weeks, and you can see that there is what I'm going to encounter in there is essentially soft woven bone, but the plates of both the plates, the cortical plates, are fairly intact, and it's a good place to go in to do an implant placement now. So I went ahead and flapped it. I was not looking at conserving papillae here, because the soft tissue type seemed adequate, and the space was fairly limited. So I wanted to go in with a decent enough incision to get some reflection, considering it was an early placement. And upon exposure, you can see that we have a good wide ridge. You can see the soft osteoid in the socket, and the thick palatal plate that's evident. The osteotomy was performed in a palatal orientation, and the implant was placed in a three-dimensionally near ideal location and closed up, and this whole complex was now provisionalized with the Maryland bridge, and that's a radiograph of the same immediately after placement and bonding of the Maryland. At 8 weeks, when I went back in to restore this implant, to do a second stage surgery, you can see now an appreciable loss of soft tissue on the facial. At this point, a palatal connective tissue pedicle was raised and tucked into a buccal pouch, the classical palatal roll technique, and that's the implant with the bulked up facial. An abutment was connected, and that's with the abutment connection, and a provisional restoration in polycarbonate, made out of a polycarbonate shell, which was relined with the light cured composite, was used. This was progressively shaped. So at 2 weeks, you can also see that there is a little creeping attachment of the papillae now. At 3.5 weeks, I have recontoured the distal of 2-1, had been built up with a little composite. You can now see a little loss of papilla on the mesial aspect of the implant restoration. This was now subsequently replaced at 4 months with a final restoration in porcelain fused zirconia. And at a 2-year follow-up, you can see the stability of this whole apparatus with the soft tissues looking good, and the papillae having dropped down and actually formed small points, which is a great thing to have. So this was a simple situation which was handled without having to augment hard tissue in any manner, just a very simple palatal pedicle roll, and that took care of it. Let's take a look at a little more of a complex situation where you have a fair amount of soft tissue and hard tissue loss in the horizontal dimension, and what are the possibilities here. If you take a look at the CBCT, at the crest, the bone dimension is barely about 2.5 to 3 millimeters in the horizontal dimensions. However, if you also take a good look at the CBCT, the defect is a concave defect, which means that there is a housing of bone all around. And so this was a 60-year-old woman. And so I went ahead, and you can take a look at the clinical views over here of this patient. So we went ahead and opened up a flap, and you can see now the defect clearly outlined. The crestal bone was about 2.5 to 3 millimeters, and there was a well-contained bony defect. At this point, I went ahead and prepared an osteotomy hugging the palatal wall, and at this point, I'm tapping the palatal wall with a 3.5 mm diameter tap. This is in order to prevent the push from the palatal wall towards the facial, and you can see that there is a dehiscence of greater than 6 millimeters after implant placement. A 3.5 into 13 millimeter implant was placed in this situation, and insertion torque was high. So now we had an implant surface which was exposed for a good 3 millimeters, all of it lying within an envelope of bone, and it was a conducive situation for a GBR procedure to be performed. It makes sense to have something that has osteogenic potential to be resting on the inanimate implant surface, and therefore I went down to the external oblique ridge with a single incision, And this is a nifty little device known as the auto chip maker, which was used to collect autogenous chips from down here from the external oblique ridge. And that's the quantum of autogenous chips that was collected. And this was first layered over the implant surface. Overlaying this, the autogenous chip layer was, I used a CPS putty, that is Novobond dental putty, which covered the entire this thing. And I also want you to take a look at the quantum of graft that has been used. It is about 50% more than the dimensions that I would like to see at the end. That is to factor for whatever resorption that is going to undergo over the next few months. A pericardium membrane from Bottis is used here now to cover this whole system up, and and tucked under the palatal flap, and you can see the tension-free closure that was achieved here. At the outset, there's a considerable amount of improvement in the contour of bone comparing to where we started, and I hope to have this carry on over the next few months before she gets restored, and then probably remain stable there for a good length of time. This was performed in August 2012. At 4 months recall, you can see that there has been absolutely no loss of volume over here, and you have a good wide playing field to go ahead and do your restoration. The other good part is all of this is keratinized tissue, which is most conducive to making adequate impressions. It is most conducive to having stability over a period of time, and this is the situation at 4 months. I do a second stage surgery to expose the implant. I haven't really exposed the bone on the facial because I found it wasteful to raise a big flap to do this. However, the facial flap, the tongue of facial tissue that we had was now deepithelialized using a blade and then finished with a burr. In this case, it was a green stone, and then tucked into a facial flap, a facial pouch, and sutured down. And you can now see the amount of tissue that we have on the facial side. And this is at about a week or 10 days of healing, and it is appreciable the amount of gain of soft and hard tissue that we've had on the facial. This is to give you an idea of the placement of the implant in 3 dimensions, and it's close to ideal. The final definitive crown was delivered by the referral who had sent her over to me for surgery, for the surgical phase, and that's the outcome over there. The ceramics are not the best, but it could have been a lot better than this, but I had really no say in the matter at the end of this. That's a closer view, and that's the incisal view, and you can see the amount of bulking up of the facial tissues. At 1 year follow-up, she showed up for a recall, and things have held up amazingly. There has been absolutely no loss of the facial contour, and in fact, if anything, it looks better than the facial contour on the contralateral natural lateral incisor. So this was another situation where things had to be handled a little differently to get an adequate aesthetic outcome. That's in October 2013. So that was a simple case in the sense that the defect was contained. It was not an extreme defect. It was a moderate defect, and I could get away with doing a simple procedure simultaneously with implant placement. Many a time you are confronted with situations where that's not how things work, and you need to do a lot more, and you need to spend a lot more time and do things in a staged manner to be able to get the outcomes that you like. So this is a case of a 20-year-old boy who had had a road accident and then had undergone endodontics, and I mean, there was a lot of things that he had already undergone. He had extreme external resorption, and he came to a friend of mine in this situation, and I was asked to step in to take a look at him and figure how to go about restoring him. So when I held the tooth, you can see how it was barely hanging on a thread, and it was actually hanging on the gutta percha that had been used to do the endodontics whenever it was. So we went ahead and did the extraction, and this was in March 2011. I raised the flap because I couldn't differentiate between the tooth and the bone. I mean, it was probably one of the most difficult extractions I've done in my life. After having got all of this out, you can see the defect that we had on the facial. Now, at this point, I had not looked at the palatal aspect of this thing. Just the fact that there was such a big facial defect, and that there was just a small lip of bone bridging the crest to the on either side, was reason enough for me to allow this whole thing to heal, to get some soft tissue closure there before going in to do any graft work. And this is after about 6 weeks of healing, and we decided to go back in and do the grafting now. And that's an occlusal view of the same. And now when you look at the CBCT, you can appreciate the defect that I had to deal with. And it's a proper 3-dimensional defect, which was compounded by the fact that this whole system communicated with a very large incisive canal. So you had and you can see the incisive canal there, and how it communicates with the extraction socket and out facially through the fenestration that we had. And that's a very large incisive canal, and you can see the communication with the socket all over again. So I went ahead and raised the flap, and you can see now that there is the socket had absolutely not healed. It was an intact socket. You can see the facial defect, and when you take a closer look, you can see the palatal defect, the palatal, the connection between the very large incisive canal and the extraction socket itself. Now, this was a situation where it wasn't really going to be possible to place an implant and go ahead and restore it in a normal fashion. You can see that the soft tissues have taken a beating, as has the bone out here, and all of this needs to be treated adequately to be able to place an implant later. So at this point, I went ahead and cleaned up the incisive canal and curated out all the contents. Yeah, that's a better view of the connection between the incisive canal and the socket itself. And then I went down to the chin and took a core of bone from one side, and the other side was where I used the autochip maker that you saw in the past to collect some autogenous chips. Now, the core of bone was pushed in through the incisive canal because I did not want to endanger that little lip of bone that was holding things up on the facial. So this was pushed in through the incisive canal and then hammered in with a chisel to get it into the socket. And so it was a retrograde kind of insertion of the graft through the canal into the socket. Now, this was covered up with the autogenous chips, then again with some NovaBone putty, and all of it covered up with a membrane. This is pericardium from Bottas and PRF. and this was the primary closure at that point. You can see the amount of pull that the frenum is exerting in this area, and it was always a part of the plan to do a frenectomy at some point during the course of treatment, and it was decided that I would do that frenectomy at the second stage surgery after implant integration. This is a 2-week healing of the same, and you can see how well the soft tissues have responded despite the hammering that they've taken in the past. This is something that I have found with all the cases that I've used PRF in. I find that the response of soft tissues in healing is outstanding, and you get really good healing in those areas that you use PRF. Okay, at 4 months, you can see that there is a fair amount of volume that has been generated, and we open a flap, this time trying to conserve the papillae as much, and you can see the amount of bone that is available for implant placement in the right kind of 3-dimensional position. And so the implant is placed at that point. Again, some PRF to cover this whole situation, some contour grafting with the bovine material, over which there is PRF, and then this whole system is closed up using cytoplast sutures. This was done in August of 2012, and that's healing again at 2 weeks. You can see the kind of healing that we've got then. 4 months later, I went in to do a second stage. The first thing that was performed here was this frenectomy. Following the frenectomy, the implant itself was exposed, the healing abutment attached, and a mini roll flap was performed, and he was sent back to the referring prosthodontist for restoration. In February 2013, he received this provisional restoration on the implant, and that's an incisal view of the same. You can see that outcomes are not ideal. There is quite a bit of a deficiency on the facial, but as far as the facial view goes, he is in a much better place than where he started. At this point, I decided that he needed a little more soft tissue augmentation, so I went ahead and did a modified Vista technique where we took a vestibular incision, created a tunnel, got some palatal connective tissue, and ended up with Vista sutures to hold the whole apparatus up. And this was a few weeks later in March 2013. Eventually, in July 2013, you can see the maturity of the soft tissue in this area. And he was sent back to the referral in July to get his final restoration. In October, he was finally restored with porcelain fused to metal restoration, and that is a lateral view of the same. He came back. This is a frontal view of him smiling. The lip does help to mask a lot of the imperfections that were visible on the retracted views. This is almost a year later. He came back to see me because his cousin had avulsed a tooth, and when he came here, it was a perfect opportunity for me to get a picture, and this was in May 2014. You can see that there is a discrepancy, so I have suggested to him in the past that he get a little bit of a crown lengthening done on the contralateral central incisor, but he is not open to that idea. However, you can see that there is stability in the soft tissue apparatus in this region, and I can only expect it to improve over time. Let's take a look at immediate implant placement as a concept. We know that it is a controversial topic. We know that there are deterrents to to immediate implant placement. There are proponents to immediate implant placement. It is so I think it's something that is very indication based, and it needs to be performed very carefully in only those situations where you find things are conducive to it. So this was a patient who is about 60 years old, female. She already has two existing restorations on the front two, the anterior teeth, the two central incisors. They are both porcelain fused to metal, which have been in place for almost 10 years. And she came to me with pain on the left central incisor. This is a CBCT. So upon examination, there was there was pulpal involvement on the left central incisor, and the other central incisor was also showing a lot of decay under the restoration. However, it was something that could be salvaged. So we got a CBCT done, and now you can see the undermining decay on the left central incisor, and the right central has been opened up for a root canal at the same time after having removed the crowns. At this point, I decided to go ahead and extract the 2-1 and do an immediate implant placement there. So this is after extraction using periotomes, and that's the periotome in place to assess or sound the facial plate of bone and to assess its integrity. And we found that we had a decently thick plate of bone, a fairly medium biotype, and it seemed like a good situation to go ahead and place an immediate implant in. And so we go ahead and osteotomize. You can take you can see the implant having been placed. A fair amount of a little over 2 millimeter gap between the buccal plate and the implant itself. Meantime, the other central incisor had been root treated and had been a core had been built over a post. That's the implant position. You can see the position of the central incisor when is a little towards the distal and palatal of the socket, which in my view is the ideal position to have the implant in, because you can then bypass even larger incisive canals. That is to show you how far subcrestal it is. All right. At this point, an impression was made in impregum, a pickup impression. So it was an implant level impression, and then all the usual procedures to get a model were carried out, and you can see the analog in place with the gingival mask. A putty index which had been created earlier of her existing teeth was now used on a temporary abutment to generate a provisional restoration. This is screw retained provisional. It is splinted to the crown on the contralateral central incisor, and this was polished and finished, and now taken in for insertion into the implant. At this point, I go ahead and now use a slow resorbing form of NovoBone, which is known as NovoBone Morsels. I believe it is not available in many parts of the world. We've been fortunate to have this around. This has a slow resorption potential, and in situations like this, when you don't want a collapse of soft tissue, you don't want a collapse of the facial plate, it is a great replacement for a xenograft. And so this was used here to pack into the gap as well as way over the gap. And you can see that I'm packing this material on top of the implant. And as the implant provisional is screwed into the implant, you can see how it expresses a lot of the material from as a flash. And this is immediately after having placed the provisional restoration. And this patient went away for a period. This is an immediate radiograph. She went away and she came back in 2 weeks, and this is the situation that we saw in 2 weeks. You can see that healing is progressing with absolutely no, there's nothing to complain about. That was the situation from the incisal view at 2 weeks. At 6 months, she came back to get her final restorations, and you can see that the two crowns are splintered right now. They were separated. This is a radiograph at 6 months. They were separated, and I now need to get the information that has been that we have in terms of the submergence profile that has been created by the provisional restoration in place. So to do this, that's the emergence that you can see over there. The papillae are nice, and you can see a tip over there. To do this, to capture the submergence, the technique is fairly simple. It has been described by many others in the past. You attach your crown to an analog, and now you adapt putty all around it and inject flowable composite. In this case, it was a core build-up material, multi-core. And to get an exact replica or to duplicate that into your impression coping. And this is now inserted into the implant and picked up with an implant level impression by the usual methods. And now you have a final restoration made in porcelain fused to metal, which is being inserted, and this is immediately post insertion. In our discussions about the restorations that we were going to give her, we decided that she would be better off with a little bit of a diastema, and that's why we opened this diastema up. This is a lateral view of the restoration and an incisal view, a radiograph at baseline. She also needed some other implant work, and so she was being sent back for a CBCT. And I took this opportunity to have this implant imaged as well. And you can see there's about 1.5 to 2 millimeters of bone on the facial of the implant all along, which is a good outcome to have. She came back for a follow-up in May 2014, which is a year later, and this is how she looks. This is the incisal view of the same. All right. Now let's take a look at a case where there are multiple teeth which are periodontally compromised. The interdental height of bone, which was one of the key determinants, is unfavorable, and there is a lot of soft tissue recession. This is a 40-year-old woman, and she's just not pleased with the way her anterior teeth look. So we had not too many options over here, and so this is a retracted view of the same. You can see the loss of papilla, radiograph showing you the loss of interdental height of bone. So at this point, I decided to adopt an approach that had been pioneered by the Salama brothers, and went ahead and decided to do orthodontic extrusion and then restoring this, getting implants in. And so a slow extrusion by my orthodontist, Dr. Sridevi, at 1 millimeter a month, followed by a period of 8 weeks of holding, and you can see how the interdental heights of bone have moved down. That's the CBCT to show you what was available to work with. The lateral incisors did not look like great sites to place implants, so I decided to go into the central incisor sockets. Extractions were performed. You can see the all the sockets as they are. Central incisor sockets seemed more conducive for implant placement, so osteotomies were performed and implants placed. The right central, there was a small fenestration at the apex, so an aesthetic buccal flap was raised. Again, these are the Novabone morsels which were used to graft the site, and a membrane was placed over it to cover it up, and the first horizontal mattress suture there, and this whole system was now sealed up using the remnants of the morsels together with some Novabone putty, PRF, and to top it all off was Pericryl's glue, the cyanoacrylate glue, and gum fit RPD or a flipper was used to provisionalize at this point, and she was sent away. This is the appearance of the cyanoacrylate glue at 10 days of healing, and this was just peeled off, and to reveal this underneath. It wasn't too much of a concern at this point, so we just let it be. And that is at 2 weeks of healing with the gum fit flipper. Second stage surgery was performed again at 4 months. It was a simple exposure of the implants alone. There was no other connective tissue or soft tissue procedures performed at this time. And you can see that both implants are, though they are not ideally located in respect to each other, they both have a palatal emergence conducive to making screw retain restorations. A little bit of contouring of the lateral incisor sites was done to receive ovate pontics. Remember, the lateral incisor sites were also packed in with the Novabone putty and morsel mix. And this is a frontal view of the same. These are provisionals made in composite on temporary abutments, which were in 2 pieces. So there was a right and a left with a cantilever lateral incisor. These were inserted into the implants, and now you can see a retracted view of the same. You can see that there is no papilla between the central incisors. This was left in place for a period of 4 months after a little bit of recontouring, a little bit of reshaping, and after a period of over 4 months, a little over 4 months, she received a final restoration in porcelain fused to zirconia. And you can see that there is still small black triangles that are visible between these between the crowns. Now this was a single piece of zirconia which was cemented onto the 2 implant abutments. This is as it progressed over the next few weeks, and this is what she looks like when she has an animated smile. This is a lateral view of the same. And just to give you a perspective of where we started and where we ended, you can see where the gingival zeniths lie with respect to the starting point and with respect to the finished restoration. A year later, this is this month that she came in for a 1-year follow-up, and you can now see how the papillae have nicely filled in and covered up all those little spaces that we had. So thank you very much, viewers, for having heard me out. And like I did say at the outset, there are a number of situations which we just need to be cognizant of, and the treatment modalities would vary from one to the other. And in this age of implant dentistry, none of us can be left behind as far as that goes. So thank you very much, folks, for hearing me out and taking the time to listen to what I had to say. I thank the whole of the Dental XP team once again for giving me this opportunity to speak to you all. Thank you.